We're going to have 4 statements today. I'm Vivienne Simon. I'm the head of the legal committee for Sugar Shack. I'll be reading a statement. We'll be having a statement from Fergus, one of the people from Sugar Shack who was facing charges today. There'll be a statement by one of the water protectors, and there'll be a statement, another statement on behalf of Sugar Shack in general. What happened today in court, only one of the charges was not converted. There's one criminal count still outstanding, and at the moment his court-appointed lawyer is negotiating with the prosecutor. We'll see what comes out of that. Everything else has been converted. The hearing will be on January 30th. We hope you'll all come to that. So there have been 2 stories in the news this past week that have been important. First, Eversource Energy is being sued for cheating New England utility consumers out of $3.6 billion by artificially and illegally manipulating gas supplies to justify increased rates. This lawsuit outlines how they used these illegal increases as justification for the construction of new pipelines, and then had the audacity to also say it showed they needed a ratepayer tax, on top of the money that they were already bilking ratepayers out of to pay for the building of these new proposed pipelines. This is despite the fact that the Attorney General Maura Healey had determined in a 2015 study that the demand for new pipelines does not exist. Second, the story of our Mass State Police being paid nearly $1 million by Kinder Morgan to act as their private arresting force to illegally remove protesters from Otis State Forest has gone national. Interest continues to grow because this is happening at anti-fossil fuel and other political protests around the country. The most extreme case being the violent attacks against indigenous water protectors defending their own land at Standing Rock. So what is the relevance of all this to today's court hearings? It is this. We have been right all along, and we are vindicated. This is an illegal pipeline, and our resistance to this pipeline has been necessary to try and stop this illegal invader into our state forest. The Sandusfield taxpayers opposing the pipeline filed an appeal to FERC showing that the need for more gas was in fact not there, and therefore Kinder Morgan lacked one of the key elements that FERC required for permitting. FERC acknowledged the appeal was appropriate and then issued the permit without ever reviewing the numbers in the appeal. We have said all along this is an illegal pipeline because the permit was issued while the appeal was still pending review, and therefore the permit was and remains illegally issued. The study that the lawsuit against Eversource is based on shows that the numbers energy companies submit to justify new pipelines are fraudulent, and they were in this case as well. We have spoken out forcefully against our state police arresting us on charges they knew would not stand up in court in order to remove us at Kinder Morgan's request from legal protests against this illegal and unnecessary pipeline. We now know that the state police were actually being paid by Kinder Morgan through a sleight of hand trick that makes it look on paper as if this were routine state police business. It is not. The real public safety issue here is the destruction of our atmosphere from greenhouse gases released from fossil fuel use, in this case, fracked methane, which is even more damaging and toxic than carbon. The 40-year extension of fossil fuel usage that comes with new pipelines is a crime against our children and future generations who are being given the legacy of a hot, toxic atmosphere that has created a climate emergency around the planet, and we know will no longer support life if this trend continues unabated. Everything we have said all along has been shown to be true, and our actions have been necessary to protect all that should be held in public trust for current and future generations: land, water, air, atmosphere, civil and human rights. We are here in court because no one in any level of government, local, state, regional, or federal, is doing anything that will stop this madness. We want all charges against us dropped. We want all fines against us dropped. We want an apology from the state police who made a pact with the devil instead of standing with the needs of the people of the state. We want Governor Baker to protect the current and future residents of the state and put the full force of his legal and moral leadership into converting our Commonwealth to 100% clean energy as quickly as the European countries are showing the world it can be done. We will continue to do everything we can to leave our children and grandchildren a livable planet. That's our job, and it should be all of our jobs. If a governor doesn't think that it's his job too, then we'll elect one who does. So stick around. The pipeline in Otis may be finished, but we're just getting started. So now Fergus Marshall is one of the Sugar Shack defendants today.
From what's been going on from our last action in Otis State Forest, I believe the state police and the courts are suppressing our First Amendment rights by ordering people to court who may be coming from far away, creating hardship for their families, all on trumped up charges by the state police. They're supposed to be working for us, the people, not the corporations. This should send a chill for anyone who has an interest in public protest. Our Constitution guarantees the right to free speech. But when it becomes punishing to do so, then our voices diminish. The court system is supposed to be here for us. I am appalled that it is by design that it is set up to punish those who do not have the resources or status or the money. Everyone must take a stand, but especially the courts. We are quickly moving towards fascism. And if our elected officials and regulators don't recognize what's at stake, then ordinary people must take action. When I was in the Army, I took an oath to protect against enemies, foreign and domestic. These corporations are domestic terrorists, and I will continue to oppose their evil plans to disrupt our climate, contaminate our water, extinct life, and take away the future for my grandson and yours and everyone's future.
The next speaker is Micah Carpenter-Lott, one of the water protectors who was facing charges in court today.
First, I'd like to acknowledge the land that we're on. A lot of this area is Mohican and the Stockbridge-Munsee people. We don't take that into consideration in a lot of these situations because they've been displaced. Now the Stockbridge-Munsee live in Wisconsin. As work wraps up at Otis State Forest, we continue to have questions and concerns about the Connecticut expansion project. Tennessee Gas Pipeline violated regulations, procedure, protocol, and Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution, bypassing laws, desecrating indigenous stonescapes, all while being protected by retired and current Massachusetts State Police. The Massachusetts State Police have received nearly $1 million from Kinder Morgan to protect pipeline construction. Corporations should not be allowed to purchase state police. Not only does it violate their code of conduct, morally, how can the Massachusetts State Police remain unbiased when officers are paid directly from fossil fuel hands? We acknowledge the excessive force displayed on both Sugar Shack members and water protectors, escalating from the arrival when we came, showing our solidarity with Sugar Shack. This 3.8-mile pipeline was just the beginning. Now all Massachusetts public conservation lands are in jeopardy. Massachusetts residents are in jeopardy. In the midst of the 6th mass extinction, we all have to take steps towards a more equitable and sustainable future. That means opposing all future pipeline construction. The current system does not need additional infrastructure. 3% of this pipeline will knowingly leak over the next 40 years. If not stopped at the legal level, this puts all of us at risk. Our children develop asthma and other health risks. We can no longer put our health and the planet's health at risk. We must protect our water, land, neighbors, animals, air, and atmosphere. This pipeline was always unnecessary. It didn't serve any of Massachusetts. From the beginning, the pipeline was met with massive public disapproval, and yet it was approved by FERC. Susan Baxter documented the regulatory and contracted procedures and protocols that were not followed. And still, the work continued. After more than 70 arrests, so far, most charges have been decriminalized because we're not criminals, we're water protectors. Though certain media may highlight the difference between our age, we were out there for the same reason. The pipeline was an attack on historic preservation, fragile wetlands, local farms and ponds, states' rights, human rights. We can no longer continue to put profit over the planet, our environment. We can no longer allow for our governments and corporations to work in cahoots with each other, not thinking of the repercussions that come in our current climate emergency.
Yes.
In this Trump era, the government, in service with the corporations, continues to steamroll pipelines, drilling throughout the U.S. and now the Arctic, reducing the size of Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante monuments in Utah, stealing protected lands for corporations to continue to destroy, disregarding the future for the next 7 generations. They are only taking and taking because to them, our planet is a resource. It's capital. It is something to be used and something to be abused. Somehow, they think that we can continue to deny that fossil fuels plays a huge role in climate change. Climate change is not a hoax. This was the hottest year ever recorded. There are thousands being affected by climate change, and increasingly so, from Standing Rock to Sandusfield. The police continue to use excessive force on peaceful protesters from coast to coast. All over the world, people are rising up against the fossil fuel industry. We can no longer sit back passively and let the fossil fuel industry force themselves upon us, locking us into decades of climate-destroying dependence on fossil fuels. We can no longer be dependent on oil in order to continue to enjoy our lifestyle that we've become accustomed to. There is no need for environmental damage from invasive oil drilling, disastrous oil spills, gas leaks, explosions, or going to war over oil. Not only have we become dependent on fossil fuels, but we've became dependent on the government finding solutions for us. We became dependent on the government finding solutions for us, fixing problems for us. What we need to be doing is utilizing our collective skills to find these solutions for ourselves and for our communities, because they're not going to do it for us. This fight is not over. It continues with yourself and your commitment to the environment and ensuring clean air, water, air, land for down the road, future generations to come. We have to continue to use all tactics, from divestment to legal, to government officials, to positive sustainability, to direct action. We have to continue to put pressure on banks who are funding pipeline projects and tell them to stop.
Yes.
Now some of us will be walking from the court to TD Bank to highlight the connection between the frack gas pipeline, the police, and the judicial system, and the investment of big banks. Thank you guys.
Thank you.